Maharishi said that the greatest gift that we have is this human brain. There are 100 billion brain cells. There are more ways that they can interact than there are atoms in the universe. And the human brain is never, and that the knower is the greatest component of education. This was known, as Daveji was saying earlier, in the ancient tradition of knowledge. It is not even thought about in current educational system. The only thing that's pretty much done in current educational system is to teach you the object of knowledge. It doesn't teach you anything about developing the full potential of the individual. If you can memorize your facts of biology well enough, you might get a good enough score and go to Harvard. The suicide rate at Harvard is off the charts. So what good is it if you don't know yourself? So the whole focus of consciousness-based education or Vedic education was the knower. Develop enlightenment in the knower. And this is easily and naturally done by a development of an internal transformation of the brain. You don't sit down to meditate and think, I'm going to change my brain today. You just sit down and you do something very simple, very delightful. It's so easy, it's so effortless. And yet, what happens is something remarkable. There are different types of brainwave patterns. Some are associated with problem solving and studying, gamma. There's some associated with sleep, and some with just the general activity in the mind. Alpha, which is self-awareness, it's associated with higher states of consciousness and performance and intellectual reasoning, is not found very much in the human brain, especially in a coherent way. The president of our brain is our prefrontal cortex. And that is something that changes tremendously in the practice of transcendental meditation. Blood flow to the executive areas of the brain goes way up, the decision making. And yet the other baser parts of the brain are put in a more restful mode. Typically, if you look at any of our brains, anytime, if I was to hook you up, you would see that there's pretty much a random activity there. As you can see. Look what happens when someone has been practicing transcendental meditation for 2 weeks. It's a remarkable transformation. The front, the back, the left, the right, the whole brain begins to march in a coherent way like an army. Now, what is the value of that? Well, I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but you can see the difference between the coherence in someone's brain who's a 2-week meditator and someone who's been meditating for 2 years. And you can see that even with the eyes open, the coherence remains. Because the 4th state of consciousness is not the final state of human development. There is a 5th state, and a 6th state, and a 7th state. The 5th state is when you maintain Atma, no matter what else is happening. And you can see this in this next chart. Someone who's been practicing TM for more than a year, you see that the coherence of alpha in the frontal lobes and the discussion that goes on in the brain is very, and I ask a question here, which person is a long-term practitioner? Their eyes are open in this, okay? Fully open eyes, working on a computer problem. And yet the brain is more orderly than you see in almost anyone else. So the student is maintaining that silent, pure, blissful state even when they're in the midst of their activity. This is the exhortation of Krishna to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Yogastha kuru karmani. Establish yourself in being and then perform action. Now, why is it good to have a coherent brain? Because if you look at world-class athletes, and India has probably got some, I was seeing, you look at the really top ones, their brains stay very coherent when they're doing their athletic performance. And you will also see this in top-level managers or CEOs, the really world beaters. You see it in musicians. But as you can see on the far right, short-term TMM meditators have it, but look what happens in a long-term practitioner, someone who's been doing this for a couple of years. Now, if the brain changes, then the DNA also changes. And what we found in recent studies is that in gene expression, all the markers for disease, all the things that cause inflammation in the body, that these actually reverse, and the markers for good health appear. Now this is something that we found, and it's the reason that the American Medical Association Transcendental Meditation is the only technique that is actually approved and suggested for high blood pressure and heart disease in the United States. It is something that has been proven to reverse all of the markers that will cause heart disease and death and improve longevity. Now, there is another component to groups of children practicing transcendental meditation in schools, and it's the reason why I am in India and looking to create some larger groups of students practicing transcendental meditation and the advanced practices of TM. From the Yoga Sutras, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the complete settling of the activity of the mind. And you can see that measured in the brain. And you can see it in the advanced practices of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which in TM City program, which includes yogic flying. Now, when we have large groups of people, historically, we've done this in the Middle East, Your Excellency. We did it during the Lebanese War. We maintained a group and we reduced war deaths and violence and terrorism by 80%. We have done this in studies around the world where we had groups of people practicing transcendental meditation in the TM City program, and in every single case it has reduced war, violence, terrorism, and the stress-related ills of society. Now there are militaries in the world where this is being practiced in groups, and universities and schools can become centers of harmony and peace and coherence for the whole world. And this was a group assembled in Washington, D.C. for a 3-week assembly. It reduced violent crime in the hottest part of the year by more than just about 30%. This was a study published in the Journal of Conflict Resolution, the most prestigious such journal in the world, from Yale University, showing that during the Lebanese War, that, as I said earlier, all markers of violence, war deaths, incidences of war dropped enormously when we had such groups. Maharishi maintained a group of 7,000 in Noida from 1987 to 1990, and the whole Cold War came to an end. So the formula for world peace is approximately square root of 1% of the world's population. Practically, like any good engineer, we would like to have 4 or 5 times that safety factor. So we're very much hoping in this year to be able to have 4 or 5 groups in India. India's traditional role is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and the entire world can be blessed from one place on earth, from India. So these programs can be easily integrated into any school or university by adding short class periods of Maharishi Vedic science on a daily basis, and the results will be outstanding performance for students and actually peace in the world. So the great power of the Vedic tradition of India, Vedic science, and I think it's time, as India is rising as a great leader in the world, that this knowledge comes as a gift from that ancient tradition and is actually doing very concrete things for the improvement of the world. I'd like to thank all of you for your time and your patience.